In this third tutorial, we'll just revise some essential model maintenance that you need to do each time you start up and complete creating the mortise, which is putting holes into solids, which is essentially what cabinet work is when you're creating joints. So start up RealCAD, open existing drawing, now an essential part of maintaining good models is to make sure that if you do make a major problem in one of your models, you can trash it and go back to where you were previously. So every time you start up, save as and get rid of the number and replace it with the next number and simply save. Keep that shortcut toolbar handy, and I'll just zoom both these windows. Another thing you should perhaps do at the beginning of every session is to eliminate unnecessary lines. Lines get generated by RealCAD when you project, which are unnecessary, and they can make the file unnecessarily large, and they can also make some selection processes a little difficult. So to do this is a very quick and simple operation. Use the Entity Display Mask, turn off the three surface types: planes, ruled surfaces, surfaces of revolution. And when you do that, of course, if you shade your object, you get absolutely nothing because there are no surfaces for the light to reflect off. Now at this point, we select absolutely everything and we press the delete key, and we always get this scary message, but what it's saying there is that any lines which were not necessary have been deleted. It looks a little scary on the screen as though you've lost half your model, but if you repaint it, you'll see that we have still got the number of lines that we need. So that's got rid of all of the unnecessary lines, so we can now turn everything back on again, and we're ready to go. Now the third thing that you should do when you start up, when you've decided which component you're going to be working on, is, as I said before, we need to make sure that the next lot of work that we do is going to be on the same layer. So use the Style Set, Clone, and click on Align option. So now we are on the right layer with a suitable color, ready to go. When we shaded that right hand view in the last tutorial, you see there wasn't actually a hole there. So we have surfaces we need to modify, and the only way we can modify surfaces is to first delete them and then replace them. So the front surface here, or the right hand surface, needs to be deleted. The top surface of the leg needs to be deleted. Now if we now shade that view, you can see that we now have open top, open right hand side. We have the open end of the mortise, but we have a closed top on here. Now when we repaint this view, there is no grid visible on the top there, and that's simply because this little area here is so small that none of the grid lines will traverse it. So select that surface, and then in the options menu go to plane and simply change the surface grid in both directions to a smaller one. And as you see, now there is a surface grid that we can select and delete. the last thing we need to do is to get rid of this line across the front here. Now if you're lucky, when you click you'll pick that yellow line. On other occasions you're not so lucky and you'll actually pick the red line. Now the obvious solution to that, if the problem persists, is to use the color display mask again, turn off the color you don't want to pick, delete the line that we don't need, and turn your other color back on again. The red line we don't want to go across there, so we use the trim command, break and delete, and I select that line to break. I want to break it where that line starts and where that line finishes. So now we have our lines the way we want them. So now we just need to put a surface back on there to include all of these new lines around the edge. Now what you can do is hold down the Shift key after selecting the first line and try and pick each individual line as you go around, but of course you get problems like you pick surfaces. There is a much easier way. With the front view on the left hand side here, if I take a very shallow selection across the top of this only, I instantly select all the lines that I need. I can click and put a surface on there, and the front is exactly the same, or the right hand side here. If I select a very narrow selection box down the front there, I can select all those perimeter lines and put the surface on there. And now if we shade that view, we can see that we have got the full mortise drawn. It's also useful once you've completed a component or think you've completed a component to use the dynamic rotate. So you select the dynamic rotate and then just pick a vertical line. Now make the pick point about halfway up and down the screen so you don't get a shock, and it rotates, and depending on whether you move the mouse up or down, you can have a good look to make sure that you have in fact done what you've needed. There are no surfaces missing on the back or the other side. And to stop the rotation, simply right click. So that's the mortise completed up there. The next and the last tutorial in this series is just going to show you how quick and easy it is to make the equivalent part, the tenon. So that ends this tutorial.